decision points, points of consequential determination, what we do, what we think, how we act, become all of them important. We will have a little spontaneous meditation on the law. It'll be only a meditation, and it will last about 20 or 25 minutes, and that will take place at 8:30 GMT. Our program right now, you know, it oftentimes goes to 2 hours. I'm going to try that we don't go that long. Michael Stacy has put the link for that Zoom meeting in the chat box. So if you'd like to copy it, if you want to come to this brief meditation on sustaining the inner and outer law during the continuation of the election process, then you can get the link from him. You know, I always trust Tuya in these things. She comes up with spontaneous ideas, and they're usually right on target. So, you know, I'm going along for the ride and trying to, with Michael, get all of this set up for us. It is maybe strange to talk about non-duality and non-relational factors during a time when duality is the prominent dynamic, and I might say an exacerbated duality, a highly frictional duality, which is emphasized, exacerbated by people demagogically inspired, people who are really focused in the Kama Manas with more of Kama than anything else, people whose passions are aroused and whose clear thought is latent. You know, it's mob psychology. When you have a mob, what are you going to do? And that maybe, you know, goes on both sides, letting your emotional body run away with you as it promotes a kind of a Martian dirty red violence is not helpful to anybody. So, you know, in the next few days, we're going to see a lot of outrageous things, hear a lot of outrageous things, and we're going to have people who are not patient jumping into action, and the action is likely to be destructive. It's the reaction, actually, that we have to watch out for, whichever way it goes. And of course, right now, we do see the trend towards blue, away from that very gross red. Well, the beautiful red of the first ray we cannot really portray. He says the red of the higher planes is almost unlike anything you find on the lower planes, and so it is with all of those colors that we might see at a high point of tension. So we, you know, just have to accept our limitations in this respect. But it is about the will. What we're attempting to do is supporting the age-old statement from the Bhagavad Gita, whenever there is a withering of the law and an uprising of lawlessness on all sides, then I manifest myself from age to age for the support, well, that's not exactly the word, but you know, the strengthening of those who do good and the destruction of such as do evil. And we're at the end of an age, and we're watching the withering of the law in the Piscean civilization, which brings with it not only the end of an age, but kind of a pralaya that is difficult to live through. So, as we have been doing, let us think about the great lords in Shambhala. Liberty, equality, fraternity are names we can give to them. And the rider from the secret place, who is the Lord Maitreya, the Christ. Let us think about the saving force, which is the combination of shambhalic, hierarchical, and human energy. And let us think about the three aspects of divinity: will, love, and activity. Active aid in this case. It's kind of an atmic quality. It's called active service, and it's on the sixth subplane of the atmic plane, if you count from above. When I think about the Tibetan, I think, atmically, how much involved with active service he must really be. And then we think also about our protective function, because we work inside with our esoteric methods, and we support the good, the true, and the beautiful, and we pose the contrary energy to the forces of obstruction. When thoughts against yoga arise, substitute for those thoughts which are contrary to the contrary thoughts. So through the power of substitution, we offer a better internal way. And thank you for turning on the recording. So let's do this together. And I think we can, there we go. Let the lords of liberation issue forth. Let them bring succor to the sons of men. Let the rider from the secret place come forth, and coming save. Come forth, O mighty one. Let the souls of men awaken to the light, and may they stand with massed intent. Let the fiat of the Lord go forth. The end of woe has come. Come forth, O mighty one. The hour of service of the saving force has now arrived. Let it be spread abroad, O mighty one. Let light and love and power and death fulfill the purpose of the coming one. The will to save is here. The love to carry forth the work is widely spread abroad. The active aid of all who know the truth is also here. Come forth, O Mighty One, and blend these three. Construct a great defending wall. The rule of evil now must end. Well, thank you for being here. I'd like to just briefly welcome you. Of course, help from Michael all the time, and Anne and Annette, Astride, and or Astrid, however you may pronounce it, Ario, Brennan, Catherine, Heike, Jesse, and Joe on our communications team, Karen, Leslie, Lorraine, Mariut, Martine, Miro, and here it says MIR. I don't know, maybe it's a repeat. I'm not sure, but welcome in any case. Yes, it's Miro again. Nesa and Tia, welcome. Welcome to you all. I feel a little strange, as I say, when so much is being demanded in the world of Maya right now to be, dealing with the non-Mayavic world. But maybe we can take a short little vacation here, away from our immediate relational responsibilities. And maybe by the time we're finished with our work tonight, at least it's tonight here, maybe we'll know something more about the trends. I always think about it, it's so archetypal, the blue and the red. The blue, of course, is the great second ray color, especially the indigo. And it's related to the heart center, even though the heart center is considered to be a golden radiation. But then again, DK tells us that in light rather than pigment, the indigo is opposed complementarily by yellow. So that's interesting. In pigment, it seems like orange, blue and orange are complementary, but in light, it's blue and yellow. So many mysteries there. And then this Martian red that rules the lower part of the solar plexus and causes so much difficulty. Of course, these are great deities, gods, and whether they're non-sacred or sacred, they are still far, far, far beyond where we as tiny little emanations stand. But this opposition of the indigo second ray and Martian red sixth ray, if you turn to page, it's about 420 or 421. Anyway, from 419 to 421 in Esoteric Psychology 1, you're going to see that the exoteric color of the sixth ray is red, and it rules the lower solar plexus, and Neptune is the higher point in the solar plexus, and it's blue. As a matter of fact, if you look at pictures of Neptune, it's a beautiful blue, really beautiful blue. It's not indigo, it's a beautiful blue. Then maybe by the time you get to the heart center, you get indigo. So there's such a battle between the second ray and the sixth ray right now in humanity. And it's the battle between the heart and the solar plexus. The solar plexus does not want democracy, the heart does. The solar plexus is authoritarian and wants to depend upon an all-powerful leader so it can be relieved of the task of thinking and acting for itself. The heart, on the other hand, wishes to have all people empowered, the will of all people come forward, and to have a true hierarchical, eventually, democracy. So that's what we're working for when we think about the law. As I say, it'll be a short meditation. Tuya is preparing it right now. Okay, friends, so let's see where we are. And we're basically, I haven't sent this to you yet, but it's program really document number 32, and it's got a, sometimes I send seed thoughts every day, but sometimes I bunch them together just because of time constraints for myself. And there's been a lot of time constraints lately. This is a very stimulating and exciting time. And I mean, it's just amazing. I can't help but talk about relativity here, that our friend Joseph Biden, the man who represents the heart center through suffering, has now received more votes in the popular vote than any president has ever received. Of course, it was a huge turnout. So it's interesting. In the future, Wesak Festival will not be as it was. The Festival of the Christ will not be as it was. Instead, in every nation, there will be some disciple initiate, number one, who represents the Buddha, many simultaneously representing the Buddha in every nation. And when it comes time for the Christ Festival, the Festival of Humanity, there will be in every nation one disciple, initiate probably, who represents the energy of the Christ. Things will change. And as you can see, it is kind of a decentralization, isn't it? And Aquarius is known as that sign of decentralization. In this case, spreading the good all over. Well, now when that's going to happen, we don't know. It will take some training, of course. But that's what DK tells us is on the way. Now, you know what I've been trying to do here? Okay, this thing is, this is called document 32, and it's from the 5th of November, which is today at least. I think for most of us, unless if you're listening from, working with us from Australia, New Zealand, or Vietnam, maybe it's already the next day, the 6th. And in the work we do, there is such abstraction in one way, and things are sort of down to earth in another way. And we have to be able to handle both. It's like the relationship between your mental unit, which is still on the lower mental plane, and the monastic permanent atom, which is on the higher plane, higher subplane of the mental plane. And the monastic permanent atom deals with abstraction. It's called the abstract mind, you know? And it deals with pure reasoning. Pure reason may be yet something else that is more intuitive. But, you know, we think about the big picture there in the abstract mind. We get the big thoughts. We look at things from a large perspective. And when it comes down to the mental unit, you know, we're pretty concrete. And a lot of people really, they suffer from that. They suffer from that concretion. And I want to, you know, if I can, just show that you know, I'm having trouble moving my stuff around here. I'm sure there's a way to do it. But, well, I hope that's not, I'm afraid it's in your way. I couldn't. Okay, so, you know, I'm going to refer to these diagrams, these colored images that Tuya made on the basis of what DK gave us. And yeah, FDisk, and just be with me here for a second. Sorry that I should have had this prepared. But anyway, and maybe there's a way that I can, I've got all of your kind of, now I'm good now. Okay. So, looking at this, you know, the way we operate here is we're trying to make a bridge. This is called, the diagram, the monastic permanent atom. And not everybody uses it. And, you know, there's a question about whether we use it as well. Do we use it? But we're learning to use it. And of course, if I can call this a course, I don't know. It's not exactly a course. It's an opportunity for us to think together, work together. We use this here. But the majority of people are right here in the concrete mind. It's called the mental unit, if they even get so high. Because maybe the ability to really use the fourth subplane of the mental plane is not so generally developed, or at least to use it in some really productive way. It's the plane of discrimination, where you can tell the difference between what is of the soul and what is of the personality mind and soul mind. So somehow we've got to be able to do both, you know, and we've got to be able to move in this triangle like this, you know, line it all up until we can move without a lot of bumps. We can move smoothly from one to the other, from one to the other. And then we would have a lower version of what we call three minds unite. There's other ways of looking at three minds unite. We can do it this way. We can, it's a big fifth ray word of power, you know, three minds unite. We can take the mental unit, the soul-infused mental unit, then the monastic permanent atom, and then the Buddhic plane, the transcendental mind. Three minds unite. Or we can take the son of mind, the monastic permanent atom, and the atmic permanent atom, which is really a very high type of mind. We're not going to really get to this Buddha mind up here, but we may receive from it. Anyway, we want to make it so that our mind can move from the concrete to the abstract, back and forth, easily and at will. And then eventually move into the place where you don't have to reason anymore because you just get it. It's called straight knowledge. We want to move into that. And my old friend and colleague, Robert Girard, who's quite a grand old man in esotericism, he lived a long time. And he used to have a meditation in which he called it Five Minds Unite. And he would take all these mental factors, the mental unit, the son of mind, that's the mind as it is in Christ, the abstract mind, the transcendental mind, and the nirvanic mind, which I guess we could call in a way the Buddha mind. Five minds unite. Well, it's a big stretch, but the idea was correct. Now, so, that's the underpinning of what we're trying to do here. Most of us don't think abstractly as frequently and successfully as we think concretely. We may say, hey, we're students of esotericism, so of course the abstract mind is developed, but no, not necessarily. And before you develop the abstract mind, you have to develop along with it this Venus mind found here in the egoic lotus, this Venus mind, this love-wisdom mind, basically. You have to develop that. And we can call it, the mind as it is in Christ. And then we can develop abstract mind and the other and higher things. That's what we're doing here. One of the things we're doing. It doesn't hurt to be reminded what we're doing. Now, another thing we're doing is we're stretching and compressing, our self-concept. When you think of yourself, you have to say, well, who am I? If you keep on repeating that question, who am I? That is called the Vicharya, and that is the great method of Ramana Maharshi, a wonderful sage from India, had a lot of Capricorn and maybe some Aquarius. And Carl Jung, whom I'm sure we all respect as a very deep psychologist, called Ramana Maharshi the whitest dot on a white space. So there was something very pure about his approach. And, you would come to this idea eventually of who you are. But, if I asked you that question, what would your first response be? Because that tells you something, your first response. Who am I? Now, theoretically, and we can begin to expand our concept there. But, what are we used to? What is the first thing that comes to our mind when we align and I'm a person, I'm a human, I'm an earth being, what am I? All those things. I'm a member of the fourth kingdom of nature. You can go on and on and on. But when you get into the abstract mind, we are beginning to stretch our self-concept very, very wide to the bounds of the universe and beyond. I have something to say about the bounds of the universe. And compressing it very, very small. Some of the great sages, I'm either this something that is like everywhere, just like you would imagine some kind of vapor or gas or some kind of very intangible something everywhere. I'm either that or I am so expressed or compressed in my expression that I'm like the smallest possible thing, the infinitesimal, as is called, the infinitesimal, which I also call the ever lessening, because it's always smaller than any definite quantity. So maybe I'm this, and maybe I'm that, And that's what we're doing a lot of that in this kind of opportunity to think together about these things. We're stretching things out, the self, and we're compressing it. And we're trying to get away from the idea that it's real when we look in the mirror and say, well, that's who I am. That's a very relative thing, that's who I am. Your image, Narcissus, poor Narcissus, he fell in love with his image as he gazed into the water, and he wanted to get closer and closer to it, and so he fell into the water and drowned. Well, there's a story there, isn't there? And of course, narcissism is a severe limitation, and it's very related to egotism, and we're dealing with it right now. It's anti-democratic. So the thing I want to get across in our discussions here, we are expanding our self-concept or our self-experience as far as we can, so that everywhere we look, you are there, or we are compressing it until it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and maybe at one point, that point disappears. You're a point, you know, what is a point? Sometimes he says that devas are points, but I'm thinking of it in a still different way, you know, that the point is the smallest possible thing, but it's an indefinite. It's just not a definite boundary. It just keeps on getting smaller, and it helps to think of yourself that way also. So what I'm trying to say is that the big U, Y-O-U, you as you, I sometimes write that way, you know, like the big to the middle to the little, you know, and that way, to give you a sense of the process of shrinking. I could, you know, write something else here, just Y-O-U without capitals. But I just put here you as you, super universal you, and intra universal you. Those types of you or I have really nothing real to do with our usual method of thinking about who we are. You know, we always assess, we always judge, what is ourself? Am I happy? Am I sad? Am I succeeding? Am I failing? Am I in those lesser ways? But the real super universal you, and even the in-universe you, are not much related to the usual way we have of thinking about who am I, because it's a very limited way we have of thinking about who am I. And we have to change that way of thinking. You know, my old, I didn't get it for a long time. I had a wonderful teacher before I ran into the Bailey books, you know. So he was the real thing on the physical plane. And he, you know, he was quite a person for justice. You know, he obviously, to me, had a first-rate personality. He was a sextuple Pisces. He had 6 planets in Pisces and had Leo rising. So, you know, that Ray 1 Pluto thing was really there. And he would use the word I. And he would say things like, I will not stand for that, you know. I will annihilate that, you know, that kind of thing. And I finally got it. He was not talking at all about his normal human self, not at all. He was so identified as this other being, which we all are, that he was speaking about what a lot of us would call God, or the greater being that is behind and within and supporting all things and becoming all things. When he used the word I, that's what he meant. So, you know, we can't get just stuck on a word. If I say the word I and someone else says the word I and someone else says the word I, we may mean 3 completely different things. It depends on your concept and your experience. So when you say, like, you know, who am I? And you get an answer to yourself, it might be a completely different thing to what someone else receives in terms of an answer. I hope that's clear, because I think it's really true. If you ask a fairly thoughtless person, one who, just involved with what the senses are doing here and not kind of stretching into other possibilities, who are you? You're going to get a very different answer than you would give when you are expanding your consciousness into the real, into the more and more real. A very different answer. Try it sometime. That means, see what people say when you ask them, well, who are you? And, you can keep it up if you want. I say, I don't mean that. I mean, in a deeper sense, who are you? Well, no. I mean, in a deeper sense, who are you? You can't push it, you can't push it. And then see where it stops for people. Maybe it just stops. And you'll understand then the limits of self-conception. Give it a try. I mean, of course, you've been in these courses, but who am I? Who am I? And I bet within your consciousness, you may feel a little bit of a back and forth, a little bit of a struggle between an old concept and a newer concept. You get into the newer one and then it falls back into the old one, but you're not satisfied. Then it goes back to the newer one. See, all of that tug of war about self-identity is going on with every true seeker. We've got to be really serious about self-discovery. So, when Yogananda names his organizations the Self-Realization Fellowship, it's a wonderful name for an organization. And it's really going after, who you really are. Self-realization. That doesn't mean everybody that's in that group has achieved, but the guru had achieved. A friend of mine said, well, he was Paramahansa. Hansa is the third degree initiation. Para is beyond. Paramahansa, Paramahansa, beyond the third degree. So an arhat, fourth degree, maybe on his way to mastership. Now, you got to get used to paradoxes in this quest for identity. In other words, we're really trying to change our identity here. Well, you're not really changing it. You're changing how you think about yourself. I mean, your identity is your identity, whether you get it or not, whether I get it or not. But we're trying to change our notion of what we are. So, I have a paradoxical statement for us here. I say there is something else which is not something else. my book on infinity is just filled with that kind of stuff. And, you know, a philosopher would normally say, well, that's a self-contradiction, so I won't pay any attention to it. But there is something else than our normal, or what our normal perceptions report to us, or as the poet Wordsworth said, there is something far more deeply interfused. He spoke of something far more deeply interfused. There's something else. But the irony is, it's not something else. It's exactly what we are. And there's only one of it, and we're it. So, you know, whatever that could mean to you, you can ponder it. Because in a way, that's what we're looking for. There's something other, something else, which is not really something else. And, you know, I could put a word there, not really something else. But maybe it's a little more extreme if I just leave it the way it is. There's something else which is not something else. Then it really seems a bit crazy and gives you pause and you think about, well, what can that mean? See, we really do have to change our self-conception. It's just too limited. Now, we can see that when we see a really egotistical person. And I remember DK talking to one of his students who was trying to inflate himself into being kind of a scientist, you know, in the days when Einstein was just being really discovered and really taken into consideration, and when all the research was being done regarding Einstein's theories. And this man wanted to, well, he wanted to be like Einstein, okay? But DK said, you can't do that. You don't have the equipment. And you are working through a very small personality. Well, you know, that would be a tough one to take from the master, but okay, the man stayed with it. He was six-ray personality, and he had that stick-to-itiveness, you know, so even though he was disappointed, he stayed with it. DK was really helping him. Well, you know, we have a lot of people today out there who are extremely egotistical. And they are really, whatever their outer power seems to be, they're working through an extremely small personality. And, you know, if I may say, such is the case in the choice we are making even right now. I don't think I have to name names. So there's something else which is not something else. Even that could prove as a little bit of a warm-up mantra. You know, you're sitting there and you want to see and be that something else. You say to yourself, there is something else which is not something else. You know, it might be a trigger. It might be a trigger for you to get into that and to see and be that something else which is recognized finally as there is nothing else but that something else. So it's not really something else. You know, I know I'm playing with words here, but sometimes when you play with words, revelation can come. What's in a word? A word to the wise is sufficient. Why? It can trigger all kinds of associations. And then you see something you didn't see before. Well, let's see here. Maybe, you know, as I say, this is an evening which is filled with a lot of things to do. I just want to say, you know, how does that something else, which is not something else, how does that come up? I mean, how do you see it? You know, I was just working on so many mundane things, just really one mundane thing after another in the world of relativity. And it had been days since I was able to really, you know, think about the things we're trying to talk about here. And I sat down and I, you know, maybe wasn't in the mood exactly. But before I knew it, bang, I had a more vivid realization of that something else. It was just there. And just at a time when I was saying to myself, well, I'm not warmed up. You know how it is with a singer. You exercise your voice a little so when you start to sing, sounds better, smoother. And I said, well, I'm not warmed up. I don't think I'm going to be able to think about these things. But maybe it was a little bit of the time spent in neglect of these things, which allowed that funnel to be created, which made it appear. And as I said before, always involve your heart center if you can, because it is your very first step into Buddhi. And Buddhi, you know, love, wisdom, pure reason, Buddhi is the beginning of all this. So the heart opens the door. I'm not talking about being sentimental or, you know, the usual definitions of love and all that. Just read and reread the beginning, first few pages of the Glamour a World Problem book, and you'll see what intuition, what Buddhi really is. It's a sense of universality. And, you know, you're sitting down in your usual circumstances, surrounded by your usual things, and suddenly universality is there. It's a presence, it's an isness, it's a, you know, whatever you want to call it. And can you make it happen? It's almost as if you just have to be open to its happening. It's not something that can be forced, you know, because the very act of forcing it becomes egotistical and works against that universality, that more universal feeling or identification. Maybe later the masters can, you know, call upon it at will. But we're beginners, so we work to be receptive to the ongoing revelation of universality, which is always present. It's always here. The very thing we want, which would expand our identity, deepen our identity, is always here. So, you know, again, this model I use, I say suddenly the presence as the presence, you'll note the spelling differences, is simply present. Suddenly, the presence, which is super beyond universe, is simply the presence as the presence, which is the presence of God in the universe, is simply present. And, you know, we can talk a good game and we can use all the right words. But unless for us the presence is present, we don't know what we are talking about. Unless the presence is really present, we don't know what we are talking about. So this something else comes up through infuception. It's different from, I perceive this lamp, this television, this keyboard, this, you know, normal item perceptions. It's different. It reveals the presence, the isness, the beingness, which is every item we normally perceive. You know, I could say it this way. I could say this: am I looking at a lamp or a keyboard, or am I, that's how I sometimes write it, looking at being, which I am? Now, obviously, when I use a word like looking, it puts the looker and the looked at as different things. But maybe it's the first step. Oh, I see the being. Oh, I see being. But the transition into feeling it, into identifying as being, will come along. So, you know, am I looking at you? Am I looking at this statue, this globe, this sculpture of the Buddha? Or am I identifying, am I looking at being everywhere and identifying as that being? These are questions we have to ask ourselves over time, which really doesn't exist, you know. But over time, we will ask ourselves these questions. So I always make too many of these seed thought points, and I always have to say, well, we can't go any further. We'll do it next time. And then next time I generate new ones. So I'm always behind. But I think, you know, this is worth carrying on with. And we can talk about whether we are extended or compressed. Next time. And we can talk about, does the universe have a boundary? Well, I'm saying it does. It's not like a wall, but I'm saying that every universe is bounded by the limitation imposed upon self-perception. Whoa, you know, what does that mean? You know, we're looking at something we call ourselves. And the universe exists within the space of the looking. But beyond the looking, there's nothing. Beyond the looking, there is nothing. And beyond the, how about that? The looking at ourselves, there is nothing. So the universe is bounded by our own, by the extent of our own self-perception. Now, if that seems too hard to think about, it is hard to think about. But basically, there's what, you see what you are, and beyond that, there's nothing. That is the extent of your self-observation. So the boundary of the universe is a kind of cessation of self-perception. The boundary of any universe is the cessation. Whoa, what happened? Cessation of self-perception. That's assuming you are God, the universal logos. I'm not going to take it any further than that right now. That's it. And I'll try to continue with this next time. And what might be the advantage of it all? Put it in really simple terms, we will begin to change our self-concept. And when we ask ourselves, who am I? We'll come up with a different and deeper answer than will the average individual. Indivisible is also correct, but okay. The average individual. And we will have a truer idea of who we really are, which can never hurt, right? And we will not base our decisions in life and our activities on egotism, or just to put it really simply, as DK has done, we'll learn to take our eyes off the separated self. Take your eyes off the separated self, he says. We'll learn how to do that because the non-separated self will be so vivid in our consciousness. I hope I'm being clear. All right, now we'll have a little bit of, you asking or thinking or questioning or whatever you want to do. And then Michael, I think, has written in the chat box, if you want to attend Tuya's relatively short meditation, because she's got another webinar after that. I think sometimes we're like a TV station around here. But it probably won't go more than 25 minutes, but that's up to her. I think that's it, 20 or 25 minutes on the law and supporting the law, outer and inner, in this election process, so that egotism, narcissism do not rule, are not allowed, and fear are not allowed to rule. If we support the law, They will not rule. Okay, so I'll open it up to whoever might want to say something or ask something.
And there has been a message go out through Constant Contact regarding that meditation that will occur at 8:30 p.m. GMT after this particular meeting ends.
Thank you for getting that together. Very good.
Back to this particular meeting,
Yeah.
Jesse has written in response to "Who am I?" a photon of light that is the infinite isness, and then added, the image in the mirror is just multiple levels of standing waves. And that is a formula prepared by Dr. Jeffrey Thompson.
Okay. Let me just, sometimes the eye has to, yeah, of course. And yeah, infinite, it's got an I at the end. Infinite. And everything, a photon, light. Yeah, you know, that's an old Kabbalistic idea, actually, Jesse, that matter is light. And the universe is actually a light demonstration. And since the one, let's call it the one of any universe, is indivisible, all items, whether it's a photon or that which a photon seems to reveal, they all are the infinite isness, because you cannot divide the infinite isness. You cannot divide it. So it turns out that everything is everything else, and reciprocally. And I like this idea of the photon. You know, some of you have, you know, your fifth ray investigations. I'm not so much into it, but I appreciate it. And the question is, to me, when I see this, is what is the ultimate particle event in any universe? I call it a UPE, you know, UPE. Anyway, what is scale? What is size? And what is the least or the greatest possible reduction of magnitude by an act of the will of the universal logos? Thus far and no further do we get into self-division. So the image in the mirror is just multiple levels of standing waves. Okay, okay, okay.
Heike has contributed. Who am I? My first inner and just spontaneous response and knowing, and I guess kind of identification, is who I always was throughout the ages.
No, it's a good way to think of it, because you've got the factor there of continuity. You know, you may, as they say in normal language, you may live, you may die, you may, you know, drop the body, reappropriate the body, but there is a continuous something. And when you can start identifying with this thing that continues, then, you know, we're really approaching closer to reality. Of course, what I finally understand, or think I understand, is that there's only one continuity ever in universe, beyond universe, only one continuity. And it is that. Even if the continuity appears to be a lesser thing, at length it will have to dissolve into the continuity that always unchangingly is exactly what it is. So I think it's a good thing to grab hold of the tail of continuity, because it gives you an idea of selfhood, which if it was shared by more people, we would have, a much different world. And it would inspire confidence. I mean, if you think about reincarnation and maybe what it is that reincarnates, it's actually, in a way, the monad that reincarnates, but we call it the jiva because the monad has added to itself quite a few reductions. That's all I can say, self-reductions. The only thing the great monad can add to itself is a collection of self-reductions. But anyway, the jiva, we say, is not exactly the monad because it has all these parts and relationships, but ultimately it is the monad. And the monad is that, especially the heart of the monad, the essence of the monad, is that which in any universe has continuity during the time or duration of that universe. What happens to it when the universe disappears? Well, it discovers that it's something infinitely more than it may have suspected, and that infinite something has a kind of continuity which dwarfs the kind of continuity you can achieve in sequential universes. So basically I'm saying, yeah, if you can get that feeling of continuity, we're already on the way to truth with that. And think about it, one of the great fears is existential annihilation, the fear of non-being. I am now, but I will never be again. I'm just a blip in the cosmic organism, just a tiny little flash in the pan. But that's because we are mistakenly phenomenalists instead of noumenalists. Phenomena is what's out there, what we perceive. And the noumena, noumenon or noumena, those are the real something behind the phenomena. And finally, the ultimate noumenon is being itself. The ultimate perceiver is a noumenon, being itself. And there's only one of them. So let's at least have the confidence of continuity. Yeah, let's develop. Let us develop the confidence of continuity. And then we'll get rid of the fear of non-being. Some very intelligent people have a fear of non-being. But if we take one more step, that fear can be dissipated, as it is a glamour. Okay, thank you. Anything else here? Is that it?
The great thing about having that fear of non-being, non-continuity, is there's also a lack of realization that the law of rebirth and the law of cause and effect don't exist too.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, the old saying about the Buddha, you know, all of this, the Buddha in his wisdom knows that all of these things regarding the path are illusory, but in his compassion, he allows the model to remain, the thought to remain for the comfort of those who could not take the higher realization. And I've seen that too, you know, I think I was taught a lesson at one point. I was kind of friends with the person, kind of friendly, and just normal, you know, esoteric friendship where you know you're working on more or less the same things and you have regard for each other and all that. But then I got a little bit into this non-dualistic philosophy and the idea that there was no such thing as progress. That's what I mean by the Buddha basically saying, well, there is no path, you know, and yet we need it. And the Tibetan says, well, there is no antikarana, really, and yet we allow the structure to remain. And at the thought that there was no possibility of progress because the person or the essence of the person was perfect forever, I kind of lost a friend on that one. You know, it's like it so upset the person that their usual idea of striving towards getting better and better and better was I unwisely spoke prematurely. Of course, you know, when we're talking about getting better and better, I have a Romanian friend actually who always says, you're going to get badder and badder and badder. So I don't know if it's better or badder, but it takes place in the universe. On the way path of return, you do get better and better in terms of the universal archetype. But when dealing with reality, there's no here and there, or, you know, there's no path to or from, and there's no real extension. All there is the superimposition of all things at a point, and even that's not real. So, you know, the ultimate thing is you've been there forever. You know, what are you going to do with words? I mean, you're it forever. You're it, as the kids say when they play hide and go seek. You're it forever. And it's one thing to say that in words, and it's another thing to have some kind of dim realization that, hey, what's going on here? Of course, your answer will be no thing is going on and no thing is happening. And that's a double phrase, no thing is happening.
Forever is a limitation of the illusion of time.
It's fair enough. It's fair enough because without, you know, Blavatsky calls it eternal duration, but it's always got to be relative to something. Let's see. So if you didn't have the big clock in the sky, and the clock is the great breath, there would be no foreverness. But then we get into Dr. Anna Kingsford channeling, that DK thought enough of to include it in Cosmic Firebook. And maybe we could find that, somewhere. I might have written down Kingsford. She was a friend of Blavatsky, very brilliant woman, and I think she was a medical doctor, among other things. And she found herself able to bring through certain things, and whatever her source was, it said, well, we would have preferred to keep this discussion from you for a longer time. But as long as you have asked, we are obliged to answer.
I found that footnote for you once upon a time.
You did. And the day will come again when we shall return to it. And maybe if you can find it once upon a time again, then we'll talk about it. And the whole idea was that all of this illusion exists so that God can be other than God also. Of course, there is no otherness, but, God would just continue being God, all alone, poor God, all alone. And the answer was peculiar, it was so that God can also be aught other than God. And it had something to do, well, we'll get into it, but it was a simple answer, not exactly a childish answer. It ran pretty deep. There's some kind of inherent creativity in the greatest of all, in the great no thing. And it will turn itself inside out, And I don't know, there's this old saying about who the demon is. It's, what is it? The Deus est something, Daemon est Deus inversus. It's something like that in Latin, that the demon is the inside outness, the inversion of God, meaning that God turns itself inside out and produces the entire world of illusion. And that world of illusion is the essential evil, veil, vile, and live. Have you ever seen that one? Those kind of anagrams? Evil, veil, vile, and live. So, when God turns itself inside out through the great breath, you get limitation, which is, the only limitation there is, or the only evil there is really, is limitation. Evil, veil, vile, live. Or whatever order you want to put them in. So anyway, that answer from Dr. Kingsford, through Dr. Kingsford, was interesting, so that God might be aught other than God, something like that.
It's on page 835, footnote number 65, the problem of evil.
835, 865?
Page 835, footnote 65, or pop-up.
Great. All right, well, it's just too much for us to get into now, but we should reserve a time when we just, if we've looked at it before, it doesn't hurt to look at it again. So thank you, Michael, for sleuthing that out. Okay, are there any further thoughts or questions that you might have? Or is that it?
No other questions, comments, no hands raised. Aristide writes, thank you, peace and blessings. She has to leave.
Yeah, well, we're going to. Okay, thanks, Aris. Yeah, I don't know where to put the accent, but Aristide, you know where to put the accent. But anyway, thank you. I'm just going to kind of make this some of these things a little different color, you know. Yeah. All right, well, that's good because we didn't take as long tonight, and that will give us the chance. Now, just checking again, if you have not gone to chat, at the top of chat is the link for our little meditation that Tuya will lead in just about an hour. So if you want to join us for that, you know, it's kind of like a little continuity because for several nights now, we've been having people really get together from all over and focus in on the great decision which humanity is presently making and which can start a stream of events which will be determining for years to come and hopefully not leading to delay. You know, he does talk about the possibility of delay. So we don't want that. And he talks about it in terms of even 300 years, and sometimes he talks about it as more. So then I'm just going to we'll close very simply. And I want to thank you for being here. We'll close very simply with 3 ohms. And because I'm assuming that in the meditation, which is coming up, we'll be using, you know, one of the great invocations or whatever. So let's just think together, align together. And reduce the space between ourselves so that we really all come together at a point. And we'll sound the Om 3 times. Om. Thank you. And lots of love from all of us on the communications team. BL, Joe, Michael, Tuya, myself, Michael Crow. I mean, so many people are helping. And we'll just see you a little later. And if not, I think tomorrow morning is Glamour. Glamour, dissipation of glamour meditation, which will be on GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar. And you should have the link now because it persists So I don't think there's anybody without the link, but if there is somebody without the link, either write me or Michael, Stacy. And then at night, we'll have a Cosmic Fire continuation, Friday night. And hopefully, we'll know something about the direction of things coming up relatively shortly. So let's continue our work with continuity. And this will be available fairly soon, okay? Quite soon. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.